Welcome everyone to the June 2023 District Data Coordinator meeting. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and put your full name and district into the chat. This is one of the ways we track attendance and are able to provide professional development hours. So thank you for joining us today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone. You should have received the agenda in last Friday's email, along with the draft of the presentation. But let's go ahead and, there we go. Let's go ahead and review the agenda so that we're all on the same page. We are currently welcoming you, so welcome this morning. We're so glad you're here. We're going to start off with upcoming due dates and timelines, followed by data reporting updates and reminders. After that, we'll hear from our Student Services Department regarding the 8300 enrollment code and other updates to 3 different student information systems. After that, we'll take a short 10-minute break. Sorry, there will be no breakout rooms today. We have a lot of information to cover, and we might even go a little bit over in time today. So just want to let you know that from the get-go. If you must leave promptly at noon, that's fine. Go ahead and take care of whatever you need to do. We will be distributing the recording of today's meeting either later today or tomorrow. And you can just go ahead and pick up where you left off with that. Next up is all things staff, including staff reporting and reminders, with staff evaluation right behind. Yes, staff eval is back, and Michelle is going to tell you everything you need to know. We'll then take a look at the slides from our testing team and look forward toward the horizon. Thanks again for being here. Speaking of Michelle.
Good morning, and thank you, Helen. All right, yes, we're going to start with due dates and timelines. So we have quite a few dates on the next slide that we'll take a look at. All right, starting with just generally June, this month is the Special Education VR 11 through 16, that collection opens. And our Special Services Department, they're here today, and they'll be discussing this in more detail. This week, we have a deadline that is June 9th, which of course means for us Wednesday at noon. That's the 7th at noon. And that is the L and immigrant counts for Title III funding. So you want to be taking a look at that information and making sure that those counts are accurate for your allocations. The next date that we have there is June 30th. This is for summer EBT, and Pam will be talking a little bit more about this coming up, and that is for summer EBT benefits. They're pulling that data from SERS to help determine who will get those EBT benefits. And then the extract is taken on July 5th. So the data pull is that week, followed by the extract on the following Monday. July 3rd is when the staff evaluation collection opens. So that's just meant to say that's when you can start gathering and start inputting the overall ratings and subcomponent scores for your district or BOCES. And there'll be some other dates that go along with that later on here. July 14th, that is the due date for Regents assessments. So that's when they have to be in. And a little bit later on, we'll also be talking about other assessments that are not Regents related, but that's when the Regents need to be in. August 4th, that is a special ed data. That's the VR 13, 15, and 16. And again, our Special Services Department will go over, who has what due and what dates those are due, and what districts have to report that information. That Monday, the following Monday, is when that special ed, the VR 13, 15, and 16 needs to be certified in the PD system, the Pupils with Disabilities system. That always happens on a Monday after the refresh. And then you'll see two dates highlighted or bolded, I should say, and that's August 18th, because August 18th is the end of year reporting deadline. And that means special ed collection for end of year, your end of year snapshot, and also all of your student data as well. The only exceptions are staff eval and SE events. And just make note of, even though SE events happens after the deadline, all of the students and all the student information, the demographics and enrollment and program information, etc., already have to be in by this August deadline. So the only thing that can happen in SE events after that is specific, meeting and that and so forth, information that goes along with that. But those students already need to be in there and need to have been in the data warehouse. So that is the big deadline. So that means August 16th at noon. All right, so then looking at September 1st, that is when the end of year certification is due. And we'll be talking about all the end of year processes, and there is a certification form that must be submitted, and this is done online through the IDEX in the business portal. All right, speaking of, we just spoke of SE events, and September 15th is when special ed data is due. Now, this is the VR 11, 12, and 14. And the certification in the PD system happens on that Monday, September 18th. October 6th is the next date we have. Now, special note here, this deadline is happening in the 23-24 level 0 database when that opens. So we're talking about next year's level 0. So we have a period of time where we have some collections going on still for 22-23, and as well as information for 23-24. So October 6th, that's the August grads until cohort grad rate is due. And then following that, October 20th, now this is back to your 22-23 level 0 database. That is when the staff eval scores and ratings are due. That's the last possible deadline. The state would like you to get that in earlier if possible, but that is the official deadline. And that also must be certified, and that certification happens October 27th. Now, that certification form is not in the IDEX. It is in the SED monitoring and performance area on the business portal. All right, so that takes us through all of our dates. And then here on this slide, we're seeing the link to the timeline. As you know, dates are always subject to change. Things may happen. So this is a good link to have bookmarked to be able to revisit, just to see what is the latest SED reporting timeline. And of course, we will also keep you up to date of any new changes that we are made aware of. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Pam, who's going to start to talk about the data reporting updates and reminders.
Good morning, everyone. And for the final time for this school year, let's talk about updates and reminders. And just to refresh your memory, things that are on this list, either because there's something new this year and we just want to refresh your memory that activity needs to happen, or it's something that only happens once a year and it's a good idea to remind ourselves what we need to do with that, because once a year we tend to lose track of what we did the last time. So on to the list. All right. First item on the list, as Michelle had mentioned, is the summer EBT reminder. And EBT was a new acronym for most DDCs last year. Unfortunately, it appears that it will be here to stay. For those of you who are new to this, EBT stands for Electronic Benefits Transfer. It's a program which provides students who are enrolled in a district that participates in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, also known as food stamps, to receive benefits, in other words, funds. Recently, we have also seen the acronym PEBT for benefits made available during the pandemic. The funds available to individual students are determined by OTDA, which is the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. This office now uses data collected through SERS in part to determine the amount of funds to be paid to each individual student. OTDA uses students' demographic, enrollment, and FERPL data in their calculations. Inaccurate data reporting in these areas could mean that students may not receive the funds they are entitled to. So accuracy is important. Data was due to level 2 by June 2nd for the initial data pull on June 5th. The final data pull will occur on June 5th using data reported to level 2 by June 30th. As DDCs, we've been reporting this data for a long time, but now that it will be used for this new purpose and with the earlier due date, notice this is being collected prior to the end of the year deadline. You cannot wait until August to review this data. You may want to schedule your review in order to have time as needed to make any changes before the June 30th deadline. Okay. All right. Our next topic is a very quick review of reporting students in foster care. There was a slight change and then a change back this year. And we had previously reviewed the details of that to reporting foster students earlier this year. This is just a reminder that the responsibility for reporting the 0011 enrollment lies with the district of attendance. If needed, the district of attendance would also have CSE responsibility. Keep in mind that the district of attendance may be different than the district of residence. And if you want more information on this, you can use the link here to access the foster care toolkit, which has a very comprehensive description of how the district of attendance is determined, depending on where the student resides. So I recommend that as one of those references to put in your back pocket for if you ever need information on that area. Okay. The next topics are a series of reminders regarding allocations. First up is Title III allocations for ELL and immigrant students. You'll want to very quickly review the SIRS 652 if you haven't already done so, to ensure that all ELL students and immigrant students are identified. Any final changes to this data must be migrated to level 1 by noon tomorrow. The final allocations will be posted in July and can be accessed at the link specified here. Okay, and on the next slide, just a brief look at what the 652 report looks like. You'll have a summary. The summary page will show a count of students, one column for ELL and one column for immigrants. And if we drill down into that on the next slide, details on how students appear in those columns or how they're counted. Students will be included in the ELL count if they have been reported with a 0231 ELL eligibility program service code. And they will be included in the immigrant count if they have been reported with an 8282 immigrant children and youth status code. Also note that districts had received a memo from SED stating that they should work with non-pubs within their district to confirm counts reported by the non-pubs. This information is included on the reports you receive on the IRS portal. Non-public schools report this information on the BEDS online form. So if you need to take a look at that to verify those counts as well. Okay, any questions on allocations?
No questions in the chat, Pam.
Thanks, Sam. All right, on to our next reminder on students experiencing homelessness. The 8262 homeless student status record must be reported with a primary nighttime residence or PNR. The nighttime residence should reflect the location the student was residing in as of the date of the determination. Should the residence change during the same instance of homelessness, the PNR does not need to be updated. If a student should return to permanent housing and then be determined to be experiencing homelessness for a second time, the second incident should report the PNR as of the date of the second determination. Okay, and another area on homeless reporting, there are two codes related to the 8262, that are related to the 8262 code that are often overlooked or underreported. And we just want to bring these to your attention. Both of the related codes cannot be reported alone. The 8262 must also be reported. The first code is the 8272 code that identifies homeless unaccompanied youth. SED stresses the obligation of providing an educational opportunity to all resident students who are compulsory school age, including unaccompanied youth. Okay, and the second code is described in a bit more detail on the next slide. Okay. The next code is the 0892, and it reports homeless students served with set-aside funds. This code is often overlooked because it is difficult to track. You'll want to report this code for any student who receives services funded in full or in part through Title I homeless set-aside funds. You'll see some of the possible services listed here, such as providing the student with school supplies, clothing, or tutoring. You should also report this code for students who have had at least one conversation with the homeless liaison if that individual's salary is funded using set-aside funds. So it can require a little digging to find out which students need to be reported with this code. As I said, it may be difficult to track, but SED does require this information to be reported. Any questions so far on that?
No questions in the chat.
All right. I'm going to keep going while they still haven't finished their coffee yet. Okay, so now moving on to our next reminder about reporting assessments. So luckily, districts reported by the MHRIC have the majority of their assessments reported through the testing department directly to level 1. We thank you very much for doing that. But, and there's always a but, there are some non-state assessments that districts still need to report themselves. So don't forget to do this. It could affect your accountability indices. Here's the list. Alt-Reg. These are Regents alternatives. This group includes many AP and IB assessments. And as the name implies, they could also be used in place of certain Regents assessments. Next on the list is CTE assessments, and these would be reported by the program provider, which in many cases will be your BOCES. The next two items can also be used by students to meet the requirements to receive an advanced designation on their diploma. The LOTE, or languages other than English assessment. Now, please note here, you only report checkpoint B exams and the LOTE pathway exams. You do not report checkpoint A. Also note, which is different than many other assessments, you only report this assessment if the student receives a passing grade. You'll also want to report LOTE exemptions when a student is exempt per their IEP. The sequence exams, there are two variations of this assessment, one for CTE and one for ART. This requires a 5-unit sequence that can be used to meet the requirements for advanced designation. Next assessment on the list is CDOS. Students must pass the CDOS assessment or meet program-based requirements to earn a CDOS credential. Okay, I was reading the question on, there's a question, we do not need to update PNR even if across many years and changes if the same instance of homelessness. That's correct. According to the requirement, the PNR should be reported as of the date of the determination. Okay. All right, and the second to last category is CCR, which is college and career readiness. Additionally, this has additional and different AP and IB assessments. These assessments cannot be used as replacements for Regents assessments, but they still will affect your accountability indices. So all of these exams should be reported for any student that takes them. And finally on this list is the COSF assessment, which is definitely not a Regents alternative, but we put it on the list as a reminder of an assessment that will need to be reported by the district if you are required to do this year. Okay. So as those are taken, make sure you're reporting those. And then a short note here on a somewhat complex topic. A memorandum was sent to districts last year regarding the special appeal. This slide shows an excerpt of that memorandum. The highlights of this are that the Board of Regents approved an emergency action last May in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A temporary expansion of the existing process to appeal to graduate with a lower score on a Regents examination was approved. The purpose was to provide flexibility to students taking Regents exams in both the 21-22 and the 22-23 school year in meeting assessment requirements for a diploma. This action is known as the special appeal. Basically, eligibility conditions for the special appeal is that the student must have taken a Regents exam during the 2 years specified in the time frame. The student must have scored a 50 to 64 on the Regents exam in question. That's the subject of the appeal. And the student must have attained a course average in the course that meets or exceeds the required passing grade by the school and is recorded on the student's official transcript. So what does this mean to DDCs? We got a lot of questions about this last year. The answer to that can be found in the FAQ document that is shown. The link is shown here. If you scroll all the way down to questions number 28 and 29, it shows information on recording and reporting the appeal. Question number 28 says, how should schools record special appeals? And the answer to that is that schools and districts must record the score of any Regents examination on a student's permanent record. The student may select whether to record the actual score earned on the transcript or may elect instead to have an essay recorded to indicate the special appeal. And then question number 29 is, how are special appeals reported to state ed? And the answer is actually quite simple. The district must report the actual Regents score earned through SIRS. And that's it. There is no other credential type or any other information that's reported for a student who has graduated with their special appeal. As long as you're reporting your assessment scores, that's the end of the SIRS reporting requirements. The schools must also maintain a copy of the special summary form that they complete. And in the fall, the districts will need to report the information from this appeal on the district beds form. So note that, just a note here, that the special appeal applies to exams taken both last year and during this school year. It is not limited to students who graduate in those years. A student may have taken a Regents exam this year, but be granted the special appeal to graduate next year based on the exam results this year. So it's not going away quite yet. You still may need to consider it, for the next couple of years, depending on students. You can review the documents linked here for additional details, but basically your administration and guidance staff should determine who is eligible for the special appeal. Okay, any questions?
Yes, we have a few in the chat, Pam.
Okay.
So someone's asking, so Regents appeals again next year, basically just a comment that it's going to be continuing.
Yes.
And then the special
as far as we know right now.
Right. And then the special appeals is reported through beds, is someone's asking about that.
We don't usually get involved. I have to look that up to see if it's actually a question on the beds forms. That's, Sam, would you make a note?
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you very much.
Yeah, and then somebody was just
The link's
mentioning.
not working. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have
We'll
to check
update that and send it out with the,
Okay.
sorry about that.
And then lastly, so for special appeal reporting, since regions are scanned using ASAP reporting and the RIC uploads all regions, the districts have no responsibility to report any scores to state ed. And they're
And
asking
Janet,
if that's
thank you for
correct.
pointing out that, yes, we take care of that for you. Yes, that is correct.
And
Okay. And she did answer the question on the beds form, but
Yep.
it's general, no not specific to a student. Thank you, Janet.
okay, and that's it for now, I believe. Yep.
Okay. Okay, and Tabitha said that, I guess she Googled it and was able to find that FAQ document. All right, so I hope that puts some clarification around that item that was new last year and is ongoing. So, but now I guess we'll go over to Sam. I don't see anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And good morning, everybody. So I'm going to talk about some new or newer items for this year. So this year stated they started to collect the crisis impact code and the crisis name. So if you have the name of the crisis, if it is a known item, that should be reported, but many times it may be unknown. So you can leave the crisis name blank when reporting that. Sometimes, these students, they may or may not have documentation due to that crisis or disaster, and that is acceptable in these cases. And just varying reasons of these disasters or crises may be natural, civil, health, or other, which I'll talk about in a moment. We have seen an uptick of students with a crisis code due to the war in Ukraine. And there have been also some questions that have been coming up if other crisis induced should be used for students displaced due to homelessness. So State Ed has provided guidance on this, and they have advised that the other crisis induced should not be used to capture homeless students. So that's not the data they're looking for. And we do understand that students experiencing homelessness is a personal crisis, but that's not the data that the state is trying to capture with this code. So just for example, some other crisis-induced reasons could be asylum or religious beliefs, etc. All right, so moving on. For this new code, our level 1 programmers, they've created a new crisis impact verification report. So prior to this report, there wasn't a way to check on level 1 or level 2 if you have entered any of these codes. So we're thankful that this does exist now. So we have requested by State Ed if they could add a field on the reasonableness report, but that hasn't been updated yet. So if that does happen, we'll keep you apprised. So to access this report, somebody has to be a level 1 user, first of all, and they can find that underneath the verification, program services, or as with any level 1 report, they could search the word crisis. So this report refreshes on a daily basis, so nightly basis, after your last migration of level 0. So anytime you update level 0, this report will update the following day. Now, I did want to note in our region specifically, I looked this up the other day, and there's only 3 districts currently reporting a crisis code. So if you're not one of them, I definitely urge DDCs to check with your registration department or whoever may be collecting this data. Make sure it's part of your registration packet because it is something new. It could be easily overlooked. Okay. All right, so if there's no questions on that, I'm going to move on to my next topic. So earlier this year, we did go over Partner Project Fact, also known as PPF. So this is just a reminder. It is a new collection this year, and it does capture P-TECH, Smart Scholars, and Smart Transfer students, which is a higher education programs, and you can find very detailed descriptions of all these programs within the SIRS manual appendix. Now, previously, the program service codes, they used to be reported under Programs Fact, so before this change. Now, they are no longer reported under Programs Fact. They have their complete separate template or domain, if you will. And you'll notice if you did try to report these under programs, you may have received a level 0 error alerting you to this new change. So if your district doesn't have any students in these programs, then you would not be reporting this. So this may just be informational for your district. So for PPF, you'll notice that a project number must be included for each student record. And this project number, it's assigned by state ed during the program approval process. And there's an office that actually maintains all of these project numbers, which is the OPASS, which is the Office of Post-Secondary Access, Support, and Success. So this is not something that we maintain here. It is maintained by that specific state ed department. So if you will, in our in my screenshot here, the blue table shows the criteria for all PPF reporting. And my green table shows additional fields for P-TECH reporting. So P-TECH has some additional fields that are required to report the PPF data. Now, if you're looking for any of these required fields, the eScholar templates will go into great detail of exactly what is needed for those. But just speaking about this new requirement, the most difficult part is going to be sharing, data sharing, having some kind of data sharing process in your district for getting those project numbers and other data from BOCES or from the other entities. So just keep that in mind as you're planning for this new collection. All right, so in addition to the items I spoke about for PPF, there is for seasoned DDCs, you may remember this, student credit GPA being previously reported, but it has returned, but it's only for Project Partner Fact, and it's only for students with P-TECH, Smart Scholars, or Smart Transfers reported, and they must have a student credit GPA record. So again, you can see eScholar template to see what exactly is required for this domain. But you'll notice now that we're in June, on our import schedule coming up for import 21 is when we will start importing the student credit GPA or when you want to aim for that. So that'll be late June, depending on your bi-weekly schedule. So just keep that on your radar because it's going to be coming up soon. All right, so moving on for districts that have reported students with the Partner Project Fact, there is a new level 2 report, and that's the SIRS 656. So this is new due to this new collection, and this report is updated daily on level 2, but again, it's going to be based on your most recent migration from level 0. So because it is so brand new, there's no report guide yet. But when I was looking through it, it does seem pretty easy to translate from the data that you entered into level 0. So you can see all the categories here and the program details that were entered in level 0. So what's nice about this report is once the students are in it here, you can drill down to see the details on the specific student program that was reported. So we are in June, as I said, and the end of year is coming up quickly. So just keep in mind, if you have reported PPF, that this report should be reviewed for accuracy. Okay.
Sam, just
Yes.
a question or just a comment added by Alan in our Student Services Department, stating that the fields required for PPF, the required ones, are highlighted in red as they are mandatory. I'm not sure if
Yes.
that's for all SMSs. Probably, I would think School Tool does it that way, but others may do it. Yeah, School Tool. Thanks,
Great.
Sarah.
Great
So,
note. Thank you.
just a note, and that helps you along when you're entering the data to know exactly which fields you
Absolutely.
need to complete. So thank you, Alan and Sarah.
Yes, thank
And,
you.
all right, back to you, Sam.
All right, thanks, Sam. All right, so moving on, I just wanted to mention the level 2 report refresh document. This is the one that is sorted by report number. So it was recently refreshed in mid-May, May 18th. So if you have this bookmarked already, or if you haven't, make sure you bookmark it. It's a great resource, because many times you may be looking at your level 2 data and saying, why isn't this updated, or this doesn't look right? And it may be because the report hasn't refreshed from your last level 0 migration. So there are some reports on here that update daily, weekly, and annually, depending on the report. So if it is a weekly refreshed report and you meet our Wednesday at noon deadline, then that report will refresh on the following Monday. Now I'm mentioning this because there were some changes recently to certain reports and how they're going to be updating. So if we could go to the next slide, these are the reports in the 22-23 school year that we're now updating daily. Okay, so the teachers teaching out of certification deadline has passed. So that report was updating daily up until the data pull on May 12th. So that is frozen. That particular SIRS 328 report is frozen now for the rest of the year. And once the UPK data deadline passes, that SIRS 333 June snapshot report will also freeze. So that'll be the data on that snapshot, and it'll be left at that frozen. But otherwise, these reports update daily. And that's, again, based on your last level 0 migration. So as long as you migrate, then that following day, these will update. So if there's no questions in the chat, which I don't believe there are, I'm going to pass it over to,
Sam, there are no questions, but I just want to point out
yes,
that although the SIRS 328 report was frozen, they're going to be using that to determine the out of certification, but changes to course instructor assignment should still continue to be reported. Just because the report is frozen doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to make updates to your course instructor assignment information through the end of the year.
absolutely. Good point. Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, so if there are no other questions, I'm going to pass it over to Pascal from Student Services.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I'm going to try and turn the camera on, but I don't know how the connection will work, so it may be coming off. Hello, everyone. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put it into the chat. We have other members of Student Services looking at chat. So we're going to start with eSchool data. And eSchool data, we're going to talk about the 100, 400 enrollment updates, where to put that in, how to use it. And then we're also going to talk about the partner project fact template. So for the 400, 8,300 enrollments, if a student stops attending school at age 14, the student must be kept on enrollment register until the end of the school year in which the student exceeds complete or return to an education Well, the student is kept on.
Pascal, your video
Yeah.
is stuttering a bit. Could we try it without camera?
Yep.
Thank you.
How is it now? Okay.
Refresh a bit.
So for the 8300 code, when you start that in eSchool data, your previous enrollment record is going to end with the 400, and you can keep the student within the same building, as the 8300 code in eSchool data is going to automatically report to the district level location code ending with the 40. So in eSchool data, again, you can end with the 400, the previous enrollment record, and then return the student into the same building. So rather than do a transfer, you can do the modified grade record. And when you do the grade records, then it allows you to end the previous enrollment record and start a new enrollment record in the same building. You don't have to change the grade level. You can leave the grade level at the grade level the student was in prior to exiting them, if it is not at the beginning of the school year. So for eSchool data, one more time, you exit the previous enrollment with the 400 using modified grade record, and then you would use the next enrollment record in the same building using the 8300 code. So now for the grade level of unknown, this grade level, if you keep it in the same building in eSchool data, then you would end up getting records out for the day calendar, and that would cause a problem. So you should exit the student if the student is in the 8300 code as of the beginning of the school year. You should exit the student from that building and move them into a school that ends with the 40. So you would move them into that district level school. You may already have one, or you may need to create one in your district to have the student reported to the correct location. Did we have any questions on eSchool data before I move on for the 8300?
I don't see any questions yet, Pascal.
Okay. Now for the PTEC, if we have the, if you go to student profile and select status summary tab, that's where you're going to find the PTEC partner project fact template within eSchool data. You would select CTE in the status type dropdown and select new, select the PTEC code and add the start date. After you save is when you would be able to go in and select add under program services to add the additional information. So it's after you save the record that you see that add button under the program service column, so that you can add the rest of the fields for the partner project fact template. The education level of the parent is required for the PTEC, and so you would be going in eSchool data to the parent guardian, and under the parent guardian in their record, you would be able to select their education level. All right, so now we're moving on to School Tool. School Tool is similar with the 8300 code. You have two options. You have the option of setting up the 8300 enrollment type within the maintenance area. So it's maintenance census enrollment type. The 8300 code, you can set it up to be out of district automatically, or you can allow it to be an in-district. It's recommended to use reporting beds provider and have it point directly to that district level location so that it can automatically report to that district level location, regardless of if you want to keep them in the building that they were enrolled in prior to exiting them, or if you want to move them to the out of district location. Either way, it will automatically point to that location when you set it up as you see in the screen. So you have the option of checking the out of district box or not checking the out of district box. Everything else that you see in the screen, the text is required field. Have to use the same text that we have on the screen here. You can put in whatever text you want. You could just type in 8300, or you could just type in compulsory age student. Whatever you want to type in, it's free text. There just needs to be information in that field. The rank, again, whatever order you want it to show up in your drop-down menu, you fill that information in. And then the STEP program code and the data warehouse enrollment code are going to be the same. And that's the 8300 code. So you put that into both fields, and then you check use reporting beds provider. This is not required, but it's recommended. And select from the drop-down menu your district level location. You're going to check active. To make it active, you're going to check export. Do not check include in attendance exports, as you do not report attendance on these students. You're not going to be checking off state aid eligible, and you can check off out of district if you want to force it to point to the second radio button option when you're in your enrollment record. We can move on to the next screen. So on this next screen, we see an enrollment record that is being ended with the 400. When you end the enrollment, the previous enrollment record, you're going to end it with the 400 code before you start the 8300 code. The next enrollment record with the 8300 code, if it's not as of the beginning of the school year, then you can keep the student in the same grade that they were in previously. And you can have it point to the out of district location if it is not the unknown grade level. You can also keep it in the in district location. So out of district, here is the second radio button. You're going to remember to check is placed so that it gets reported. And if the student was being ranked before, you will probably want to uncheck include in rank. We can move on to the next one. So here, when you have out of district checked off, or when you have out of district checked off, it automatically goes to that second radio button option. But if you don't have out of district checked, then it allows you to keep the student in the same building or in one of the building locations. And you would not check is placed in this circumstance if you're keeping the student in the in-district building. And you could still uncheck include in rank if you don't want that student included in your rank. The end of the school year is going to come up soon. And so if you're going to be ending the 8300 enrollment code, you can end it with completed grade or retained in grade, so that you can roll the student over into the next school year, starting with the 8300 code again. So you can choose retained or completed. For the upcoming school year, since the student would be, prior to that, the screen that we're on. So if the student is being considered a dropout because they've reached the age requirement or the maximum age to be considered a dropout, and you're not going to be rolling it over, then you would probably be ending it with a 425 rather than completed or retained, because you're not going to be creating a new enrollment record for the next school year. And so you can end it with a 425. If the student has returned and they're going to be coming back to school, then you can end it with a 153. This next enrollment record is for the 8,300 starting at the beginning of the school year. We are saying that you have to keep it out of district. So whether you had out of district checked or not, you would be selecting the second radio button option and selecting your out of district provider. If you already have it pointing to the out of district provider in the enrollment type setup, then it will automatically go to that out of district provider. If you don't have it selected in the enrollment type setup, then you'll have to go through the drop down menu and select your out of district, your district location. The grade level will be unknown starting from the beginning of the school year. So if you have the student as 8,300 as of 7/1, then you're going to select the grade level of unknown, and don't forget to check is placed.
Pascal, this is Alan. There's a quick question in the chat here. Janet says, in New York, isn't mandatory school age through the year the student turns 16 years of age?
I think what the SIRS manual said was based off of the district's policy or something like that, but I copied and pasted directly from the SIRS manual, and it said something about 14 or 15.
Thank you, Pascal.
Okay, Pascal, this is Pam. I do want to just add to that. We can check the reference, but compulsory school age in New York State, in almost all cases, goes through the end of the school year in which the student turns 16. There are some districts that have changed that to 17, but I think in general, we want you will not be able to, and level 0 will error out if you try to exit a student with a dropout code prior to the end of the year in which they turn 16. So, but we'll double check that reference and let state ed know that there's
Thank you,
some
Pam.
conflicting information out there. Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, School Tool Partner Project Fact Template. The School Tool Partner Project Fact Template can be found under Census, Student, Other, and you can add the program service code of 4026. So the program service code of 4026 will give you all of the fields that you need for the template. And School Tool automatically highlights the fields in red that are required, though there are several other fields that are here. They are not necessarily required if they are not in red. We'll go on to the next screen. And education level of parent is all required in School Tool. And that can be found in the students demographics tab. So as opposed to the other system, eSchool Data, where you put that information on the parent's record, in School Tool, you would be putting this on the students demographic tab. So you would go to the students demographic tab, you would select edit and scroll on down to the bottom of the screen where you would see the education level of the parent that you can enter. Go on to the next screen. Now, Infinite Campus. Infinite Campus, to end the previous enrollment record again, you're to have the exit code of 400. So you can put that into your local end status. You'll end it with the 400. And then the next enrollment record, you can start that with the 8300 code. The 8300 code here, then you're going to be moving the student to the district level school for that 8300 code. If you have the school set up as a calendar on its own, then you can move them into that calendar, or you can move them into, if you have a collective group of out-of-district locations in one calendar, so you have like one out-of-district calendar, then you would make sure to do the location override for the 8300 code so that you can report them as being in that district level location. Could move on to the next screen. So this screen here shows you that location override field. It's under the state reporting field, and from location override, the district level location that ends with the 4 zeros. The beds code override field is not required, but to maintain consistency, then we do recommend that you put that information into the beds code field if it ever becomes required for anything. Next, we have the grade level of unknown. You will have to set up that grade level within the out-of-district calendar or the calendar for the district level location, whichever you're using. You will have to set up that grade level of unknown. You can call it UNK. That's the abbreviated version of the unknown grade level. You have to give it a rank and make sure that it doesn't conflict with any of your other grade level rankings. And then you would select the state grade level code of UNK unknown. If the student starts at the beginning of the school year with the 8300 code, then you would select that grade level of unknown in their enrollment record. And again, you would be using the location override. If you have one out-of-district calendar, you would use that location override of the location ending in the 4 zeros, your district level location. The partner project fact template, you will navigate to student information, state programs, PTech, and you will select new. Enter all of the required data for the PTech program into the fields that become available after you select new. And when you are finished filling that out, then you save it. For the parent guardian education level, the field can be updated by going to the all people search, and you would search for the parent or guardian, go to the parent guardian's demographics area, and you would edit to add the education level for the parent and save that information. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you to everyone who has presented so far. We have a lot more coming at you in the second session of this meeting, but for now, let's take a quick 10-minute break, stretch your legs, go get a cup of tea, do what you need to do, and we will see you in about 10 minutes. On the recording. Welcome back from the break. Sorry, there was a little glitch there in the middle of the break, but we got back to you right quick. So, all right. So start off the next section of our meeting, we're going to be discussing the end of year reporting for this current school year 22-23. Okay, So these are some of the things that are not typically reported until the end of year. It should give you a good idea of what data you should expect to be working on for the remainder of the school year. A complete review of all program service data should be done by looking at your SIRS 401 reasonableness report, just to be sure that you've not missed anything. And Sam is going to be talking about that report in a little bit more detail later on in our meeting. The Seal of Biliteracy is awarded, award is granted to students who have attained proficiency in a foreign language. In order to grant the student a Seal of Biliteracy, use program service code 8312. That code can only be used once the student has completed all requirements for a Regents diploma. And that's important because a student may have attained the foreign language proficiency in a year prior to completing additional requirements for said Regents diploma. If you need more information about the Seal of Biliteracy, please go ahead and use this tiny little link here. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer up again. Use this link here and you'll have all the information about the Seal of Biliteracy. The Seal of Civic Readiness is a formal recognition that a student has attained a high level of proficiency in terms of civic knowledge, civic skills, civic mindset, and civic experiences. Students who receive this must be reported with program service code 8313, received Seal of Civic Readiness in the year in which they complete all requirements for a Regents or local diploma, even if the criteria for receiving the Seal of Civic Readiness were met in a prior year. If you're not currently reporting the seal and would like to, or you need additional information, you can refer to this link here. Now, in years past, we have provided lists for you for districts who are awarding Seal of Biliteracy and districts who are awarding Seal of Civic Readiness. We do not have those lists current at this time. They've not been provided to us in a format that was easy to parse. So we don't have those ready for you. Again, if you're not sure that you're reporting or you want to be reporting, you can use the links on both of those slides. So if you haven't already, you should start end of year verification now. And in order to do so, you have to know what must be certified and have a plan for who will be included in the verification process. An end of year grid will be distributed to you sometime after this meeting, once we receive the final iterations from SED. But looking at their draft, you can see the folder in level 2 that contains the report you'll be viewing, what the focus of the report is, and what the SIRS number is, as well as the report title. Also notice that there are 2 sections. There's this certification required and certification not required, otherwise known as verification. So it's also different from years past because it won't include a column that shows what entities are responsible for verifying or certifying which reports. Rather, they're going to release 3 separate grids this year. So one for public schools and charters, one for BOCES, and one for religious and independent schools, otherwise known as non-pubs. So our analysis are showing this to you. This is all very preliminary. So we may see something different when SED delivers this to us. So we will make sure that we get them sent out to you as quickly as we receive them. So keep your eyes peeled on your email accounts.
Helen, I have a comment on the seals.
Mm-hmm.
Just the comment that the Seal of Civic Readiness is available by districts that are approved to offer that seal to students who receive not only a Regents diploma, but also to receive a local diploma. whereas
Yeah.
the seal of biliteracy is only available to students who receive a Regents diploma.
Thank you for that distinction.
Yes, I always forget that every year.
Remember. So this is going to be basically generally your workload. This is a quick at a glance checklist that we've prepared for you to show all the reports that we believe to be talking about. Again, remember the official grid has not yet been released, so we don't know for sure that this is accurate, but this is what you needed your attention this time last year. So this is a good place to start. Note the reports in the purple box to the left are to be verified, while the ones in the orange box to the right are to be certified. The ones along the bottom, they should be at least verified. We are not aware if these should be certified or not. And again, we will let you know when we receive an update to that. So word to the wise is get started yesterday. And here are some general reminders about student class grade detail. As you know, student class entry exit and student class grade detail are linked. If you have a class, you need to give a grade for that class. In other words, all K-12 students should have a student class grade detail record if they have a student class entry exit record, with the following exception. If no grade or other outcome is awarded for the class, no credit is earned for the class, and the linkage is not reflected on the student's report card or transcript, then no student class grade detail record is required. Additionally, AIS, RTI, and resource room classes do not need to be reported if no grade is given and it's not on the report card. In the student class grade detail template, you must report a course outcome, pass, fail, or N, or PF or N. Additionally, for grades 7 through 12 and ungraded secondary, credits attempted and earned must also be reported. Only report summer school if it was taken for credit recovery, graduation credit, or a final grade. Do not report for summer school enrichment courses unless it is for high school credit. Please note that when you do report summer school for credit recovery, the credit recovery field in the template must be filled in with a Y for yes. So also remember that when you are reporting summer school, what you would report in the 22-23 school year, which is this current school year, you would report summer school from last summer, last July, August. The summer school that's coming up won't be reported until the 23-24 school year. More about student class grade detail. There are fields on the student class grade detail record specific to dual credit courses, namely post-secondary credit units and dual credit code. For post-secondary credit units, report the credits, if known, for each course awarded to the student during the school year by a higher education institution. The dual credit code field is used to identify the setting in which the student is earning dual credits, for example, from BOCES or another district. Leave it blank for non-dual credit courses. This code is important for the identification of a student in a dual credit course in a situation where the district responsible for reporting the student class grade detail record is not reporting the course instructor assignment or student class entry exit data. So there are some enrollment changes for VR reports. You're going to be hearing all about VR reports later on in the show from our special services team. But for now, we'll say that any students missing from VR reports due to a missing enrollment record need to have that enrollment record reported prior to the August 18th deadline. Often the special ed department does not update student data until after they have their IEP meetings. So make sure that all student data in these instances are updated before August 18th in level 0. The VR 14 is for students in non-pubs who were evaluated. If special ed is going to report a special ed event record, a 5905 enrollment is required. If they realize the event record is missing during the final review of data, there will be no way for them to include that student in the VR report, and they will have to certify as inaccurate. So make sure you get your data in. With that, I'm going to hand it to Pam.
Okay, but I'm going to give you a question first. So actually, I got most of the answer typed in. The question was, what about credit recovery if a student didn't go to summer school but repeated the course during the school year? And the answer that I've almost finished typing is that if a student took a course, retakes a course during the school year for credit recovery, the credit recovery indicator should be reported on that student class grade detail record. So it should also be used for courses repeated during the school year.
Thanks, Pam.
Sure. And one other, what is COSF and what assessments are those? They're a special education assessment for preschoolers. And yes, they should come out of IEP Direct. I'm gonna pass any additional details off on that to Sarah when she, yes.
Or frontline IEP.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, frontline IEP. Thank you, Michelle. So, and Sarah can elaborate on that when she speaks during her session, because I think she's probably a better source. Okay.
Thank you.
Exiting students from ELL eligibility. Okay. Although testing may begin in the spring, the nicest lot test results and the 3 through 8 ELA assessment results, which are needed to determine which students must be exited from ELL eligibility, will not be released from SED until sometime in August, which does not allow much time for those students who have achieved proficiency to be exited before the end of the year reporting deadline. Now remember, they're going to be exited with an exit date of June 30th of the current school year. So in other words, you should plan for a bit of a time crunch in the days leading up to the final import deadline. If you have vacation plans for the 3rd week of August, you may want to bring your laptop to the beach with you. I'm sorry to say that, but remember, I'm just the messenger. But we have some good news too. Last year, the folks at MHRIC, the Western New York Regional Information Center, where our level 1 data is housed, developed a couple of level 1 reports that will identify students who need to be exited. These reports were available for the first time last year and were very helpful. So we are expecting that they will be helpful again this year as well. That is, of course, once the results are available and loaded. And this slide shows where you can access those reports. It gives you the breadcrumb trails to get to those reports. Okay. The next slide reminds you of what the exit criteria are. So for a student who tests proficient, the program service code 0231 will be ended with a date of June 30th and with one of the following exit codes. The exit code will be a 3011 for students who score commanding on the NYSA slot, and an exit code of, or an exit code of 3022 for students who score expanding on the NYSA slot and scored proficient on the 3 through 8 ELA assessment, or scored 85 or higher on a Regents exam or an approved Regents alternative. Now,
Sorry, Pam, just to say out loud that 65, not 85. 65 or higher on the Regents exam.
well, I have high expectations, but thank you. And just to point out that 3022, it's not an optional thing. It's not if you choose to exit them. If they achieve those scores, they must be exited from ELL eligibility. And on the next slide, it talks about a little about the other ELL program service codes and what needs to happen with those. So if a student is exited, and they also had a site for students with interrupted or inconsistent formal education, or a 1, 2, 3, 2, that must also be ended on the same date. And if they are enrolled in an ENL program with a 5709, that also must be ended. There are 2 other program codes that may be ended if the student is no longer participating in the programs, and that would be the 1 or 2-way dual language program or the transitional bilingual education program. So if the student remains in those programs, you can continue to report those records. And the next slide gives you a quick look at one of those new reports that are available at level 1. And you'll notice that it indicates in column 3 whether or not they should be exited with a 3011 or a 3022. It gives you the student information, student IDs. I made those up. And I made up the names. So we have no PII here. On the second half of that, on the lower screenshot, you'll notice in the third column on that part that it shows for those students who exit with a 3022, it shows the information on the ELA assessment, whether that be a Regents or 3 through 8 ELA, and the scores that the student achieved on those exams as well. You notice the program end date of 6/30/2022. And once you've entered that information into the data warehouse, you'll want to rerun this report, because if you inadvertently typed in 06/03/20, well, obviously it'd be 2023 this year, column 2 will not have an X in it. Column 2 only gets an X if you've exited them appropriately. So it's a great check to see if you've entered everything correctly. And for districts that are entering a lot of them, then it'll be very, very beneficial to you to be able to eyeball that column 2 and see if you've got them all in there correctly.
Pam, you have a question in the chat. What the report?
Yeah, that, I hang on. There were 2 reports, and that is the ELL tested out student list. It's under the verification reports folder, and then in the assessments folder, and then it says nicest, the title of the report, I apologize for not including that on this slide. The title of that report is nicest lot ELL tested out list. And it is referenced on the previous slide. It's the second level 1 report that was listed there. Okay.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, so we're up to 2023 graduates. And you'll be doing a lot of information to make sure you report all your graduates correctly. But it is possible to upload what you think is complete information for your graduates and get no errors in level 0. Unfortunately, that does not mean that everything is 100% accurate. Here's what you need to report for every graduate or completer. Most important is the credential type. This is used as a measure of school performance, which will be reflected on the school report card. So it's important to be accurate. So you'll need to ask yourself, what type of credential did they earn? A local, a Regents, or advanced Regents diploma? Or did they earn a credential such as this skills and achievement credential SAC, because you can't remember all the words, or a CDOS. Ask, did they earn a CTE endorsement? If your CTE students attend a BOCES, you will need to contact your BOCES provider to determine which students have met all requirements for this endorsement. If the student earned a local diploma, was this awarded based on a superintendent's determination? Did the student qualify for honors or mastery? This one is often overlooked. Check out these definitions. Your guidance department should be well versed in this, but if your district has none reported, it can't hurt to ask if it might have been overlooked. There are several reports that have been or will be mentioned today. You'll want to review those reports thoroughly and pay special attention to any category that has a 0. If you are reporting 0 CTE endorsements or 0 students who qualified for mastery in math or science, something may have been overlooked. There are a total of 27 different credentials that can be awarded, so choose wisely and verify that each student received the appropriate credential. So in addition to the credential type, all graduates and completers must have a career pathway specified. We've been doing this for several years now, but it's occasionally overlooked or an incorrect pathway is reported. And don't forget the seals. These are reported using program service records reported in the year of graduation, as Helen mentioned. Make sure you include students who may have earned the seals in prior school years. And also critically important is the grade 9 entry date, which should have been reported for most students for the past 4 years. It's also known as the cohort date, and make sure that it reflects the date the student first entered grade 9. And finally, you'll want to end the student's enrollment record appropriately. If the enrollment record is not exited with the appropriate exit code, the graduation will not count. So it's a lot of details, but all are important so that your graduation rate and your college, career, and civic readiness indexes will be accurate. Let's take one more minute on the next slide to take a little bit deeper look into career path codes. So this must be reported for all students earning a credential or a diploma. By far, the most common career pathway that is reported is humanities, or HUM, which is used for all students who take and pass 2 Regents exams in social studies or have earned exemptions on those exams. The exceptions can get complicated, but again, the information should be coming from your guidance department as they know best what the student has completed. So firstly, and not really complicated, is the pathway of none. None is used for students who earn a CDOS or a SAC or a high school equivalency diploma. It's really a direct correlation there, so that simplifies things a bit. So the only students that remain, so we talked about students who took and passed 2 social studies, earned CDOS or SAC or a high school equivalency diploma. So then the rest of the students, what should you do if they don't earn the humanities or they aren't reported with none? Well, basically, all the other pathways are used when students pass only 1 social studies exam. You can check your SIRS manual for the details of this, but since it's a smaller percentage of students, we're not going to go into all those various themes here, but you can always call us if you have questions. But again, this is something that really your high school counselors should be well versed in assigning those career path codes. Any questions so far?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Sam. All right, so moving on to other end of year reporting. And the next topic is P-TECH students who complete their high school graduation requirements. Now, remember, those P-TECH students may be continuing in the district. So if they have fulfilled their high school graduation requirement and plan to continue in P-TECH, you should exit them with a 0065. If they graduate and do not plan to continue in P-TECH, although they would be eligible, then you would exit them with a 799. Okay, in addition to that, you're going to report all the credential information and other information required for graduates. So the important thing here is the 2 exit codes. And if you have a P-TECH student who is continuing, make sure you report their graduation information, indicating which high school credentials they have earned. And next, so how do you make sure this data is all reported correctly? Well, we have some reports you can use. Although now you have many options about which report to review. Remember, level 2 is the data you will certify. So minimally, your final review should be at level 2. Level 2 provides you with in the total cohort folder with a couple of reports, one for cohort summary and one for career pathways. So you can review that data there, and you can see here the headers that show the information included in those reports. And all the data points we just mentioned can be found in these reports. You will also be able to review by cohort your dropouts, students who are still enrolled, and students who transferred into an AHSEP program. And it's important to review those columns as well, because perhaps someone who you think had graduated didn't have the required information entered and is listed as still enrolled. So take a look at those columns and drill down into those lists to ensure that nobody was overlooked. So, but since these reports reflect students in a particular cohort, you may need to run the report with a different cohort to verify your 5-year graduates or perhaps your 3-year graduates. If that sounds a bit cumbersome, we have another report you might like. You can find a variation on the theme of your graduate data in the annual outcomes folder. The SIRS 308 will show you a breakdown of credentials reported for the current school year. This is a different group of students than you will see in the total cohort report. And it will include any student who earns a credential this year. You don't have all the information that is available in the total cohort report, but it's a good idea to review the data from this perspective also. And finally, you can take a look at the reasonableness report as well. Run this report with a category type of credentials. This will give you a complete breakdown of all the credential types reported. Did you miss any? Is mastery in math and science listed? See, this is a good place to have any categories that have 0 students reported with that type of credential. So these reports are all important, but remember, you are part of a team. It's the perfect time to ask the rest of the team to help with this task to verify the reported graduates. Once you finish reviewing these reports, consider yourself graduated, or at least on to the next task on the list. Are there any additional questions on graduates?
We just got one.
Just got one.
SIRS 341, graduation exam requirement DL report has green check marks under the pathway, humanities, STEM, etc., that each student qualifies for. Not all of my students qualify for humanities, but it seems they qualify for a STEM pathway.
Okay. The 341 has a recommended information based on data that has been reported. If, for example, a student attended did not have continuous enrollment in high school in New York State schools and was granted an exemption from science or social studies based on the date they entered, if that exemption had not been reported, then the 341 may show that they're not eligible. But again, those are recommended based on what's reported. So the first thing I would do when looking at that report, if there's a student who does not qualify for humanities, is to ensure that every exam that was taken or exempted from has been reported. That's not though the 340 and 341 are used as references, and they do not indicate the credential type that the student must receive. That's information for guidance to use, and also to verify that all data has been reported. Does that make sense, Sherry? Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you, Pam.
thanks, Sam. Over to you.
All right. So we're going to move on to CTE technical assessments as they're reported by the program provider. So as it notes here, the technical assessment must have a score of pass or fail reported. A student does have to have a passing score on a technical assessment in order to receive the CTE endorsement on their diploma. So just because the student is a concentrator and also passes the CTE assessment, they still might not get the endorsement because they might have other requirements that they have to meet, maybe a project or something. So in that case, like if they did not finish the project requirements, even though they have the concentrator and the assessment passed, they might not get the endorsement. So it's important to work with your BOCES or your district CTE. If it is an in-district CTE coordinator, to ensure that the student is properly reported with what they've earned. Okay. And in addition to the assessment, there's also work-based learning requirement that the student has to meet to be granted that CTE endorsement. So the 22202W is the work-based learning. And I think the most confusing part about this is that it's a course, not a program. So for this work-based learning, a certified teacher could be the staff member that's overseeing the participation of the course, has to be assigned. And with work-based learning, it is reported one time, which may not be this year. It's the year that they achieved 54 hours for the work-based learning, which could be a previous year. So you might have to do a little digging to see if they have met that. Now for work-based learning, hours for field trips, guest speakers, classwork, like routine classwork, college visits, or non-school affiliated employment should not be counted towards the total hours for work-based learning. Okay. All right, so I did provide the link there for any approved programs if you do need to see that as well. All right, so moving on to some more CTE reminders because end of year is coming up. So when reporting CTE level 0, it doesn't allow more than one CTE program record per student. I'm sorry, it does allow more than one record per student, but they can only be a concentrator in one CTE program. Okay, so it's just a reminder, there's nothing that has changed with this. This is the same reporting as last year. And the reporting, the CTE reporting still does require a CIP classified instructional program code, the intensity, the service provider, the start and end dates. So all that is still the same. And the CTE programs are still reported by the program provider. So just for example, if BOCES is providing the CTE program, BOCES would report that program for the student. So districts will have the ability to verify what has been reported for their students on the CSRS 305 once the BOCES have reported those programs. So I do know in our region, some of those BOCES are still working on getting those programs in. So if you check the CSRS 305 and you don't see anything yet, you may need to check back at a later time as they're still working on getting those reported. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, the CSRS 305 is the Career Technical Education Report. Now this does update weekly. Okay. So keep that in mind if your students are at a BOCES, there's a bi-weekly import schedule. So it'll depend on when that was updated. at your BOCES. And then it'll update that following Monday. So that's a weekly report. So if your district does have perhaps a high school CTE approved program and there's students also going to a BOCES CTE program, you would see two lines. You would see both service providers listed on the 305. Okay. There is also a column here. So if you're looking at the number of concentrators passing the technical assessments, as you can see, they're 0 as of now. So this means that nothing has been reported yet. Maybe it's a little bit too early. But if this was in August, that would be concerning. You would want to follow up with your BOCES or your CTE program provider to see what's going on. So I did notice.
Sam, you got a couple questions?
Yes. So the question, if there's nothing in the 305 yet, so then in that case, that your local BOCES would need to update their programs. Once they do so and the data migrates, then you'll be able to see some more information on there.
And I would expect to see that hopefully relatively soon, because you're going to need to know your CTE endorsements prior to graduation, which is only a couple weeks away. So the districts are going to need to know that information very, very soon. The next question that was on there are the CTE hours recorded in the SMS in additional to the technical skills, technical assessment score for the CTE endorsement credential.
Right. So there's
and that's from Teresa in the district. So Teresa, if your students are, I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Teresa, if your students are attending a BOCES, BOCES will be reporting all of that information except for the endorsement. So the only thing that would be required in your SMS, unless you're tracking it for local use, would be the endorsement credential. Does that answer your question? Okay, and Joan also said that BOCES always sends us the stickers and whose diploma to affix them to. Okay, great. All right, and Teresa's good. All right.
So as Joan mentioned, there may need to be some coordination with your BOCES if you find that you're, missing any information on here, but just give them some time to get those programs updated. All right. So if no more questions, I'm going to move on. So just as we're discussing CTE, I wanted to take a moment to mention how important it is to report these credentials correctly. So as Pam mentioned earlier, I think it was 27 options for graduates. So for districts, properly reporting your graduates, it's going to affect your CCCR, so your College Career and Civic Readiness Index. So depending on how a district of residents reports a credential will also affect the BOCES CTE data. So if a district misses reporting the credential with the CTE endorsement, BOCES will not accurately be able to view their students on the SIRS 345. So using this screenshot as an example from the SIRS 345 report, if the district just reports them with a Regents, they're going to show up in that first highlighted column K. Whereas if they report them with the CTE endorsement, they're going to show up in the column L. So it's important and beneficial for both the district and the BOCES so that the students are showing correctly and verified correctly. Okay. So moving on, I'm just going to go over my next few slides. There's some last minute verification tips as my team has mentioned throughout this presentation. The end of year is coming up and you wanted to start verifying information yesterday, right? So I'm just going to go over some tips, and for you seasoned DDCs, you're probably going to be just reminders. But we do have a lot of newer people, so I just want to go over some of these things. So just the last minute items will help you check up on your data. I'm going to go over level 0, 1, and 2 briefly, just so you can see some items. So the dashboard report, right? We're all familiar with it. It seems obvious. We want to double check that, especially before the end of your deadline. You'd be surprised how a domain can be accidentally skipped, especially if it's at the bottom of the list. We're so used to looking at demographics, enrollment, and programs, but you want to make sure that all your domains are migrated, in a timely fashion. So in the last upload column, so that there you go, thank you. So if it's pink, that means there's been a change since that last data was sent to level 1. So if there are any errors, of course you want to resolve them and migrate the file for level 1. So as you clean up items and errors and whatnot, just keep the hierarchy of the domains in mind. And due to level 0 now having when you go to migrate the data, it won't let you migrate the domain unless anything that it is dependent on beforehand. So that's a nice addition from previous years where we just kind of had to remember which one had to get migrated before the other. So any imports or verification errors on this dashboard also appear in red. So that's a nice new addition. Pay attention to those. And then the golden highlights we mentioned in our previous meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, under the last update column. So this will appear if a manual change hasn't been made for certain domains in 14 days. So if new data is imported though, for a domain and there's no errors, no changes, the data is the same, just keep in mind that the golden highlight will persist. So it's just going to stay there if there's nothing different about that. Okay. So if there's no questions, I'm going to move on. So still in level 0. So under the reports programs, there's an option for category breakdown, and this allows a one-page glance at all programs for this year and last year. So if you notice here in our screenshot, the prior year, you can't drill down on those to see the students that were in that particular category. But if you roll back your level 0 to the previous year, you will, underneath the same category breakdown, you would be able to see those particular students. So you'll notice there's a lot of pink here, right? If there's more than a 10% difference from last year to this year, the program will be highlighted pink. And this might be an indicator, maybe there's something missing, or maybe the numbers are off. It might be an indicator to look into those further, especially if a program is showing 0. Maybe that was overlooked or omitted for some reason. So you want to just double check to see if that's something you should report this year. So these could be like pink flags to look further into. So I think it was Helen earlier mentioned about summer school, right? So in our screenshot here, we see summer school participation is 0. Nothing's been entered for this school year. So summer school would have been July of 22, not 2023, because that's the next school year. So if I was looking at this data, I would say, that's interesting. We didn't have any summer school. Maybe I need to look into those and see about reporting them. Also, the free and reduced lunch is on the bottom there. You can see there has been quite a change. I think that's a 10. The reduced lunch went from 94 to 10. So that's concerning. We might need to look into that. So sometimes it's not just about having data there, but verifying that the data you do have is accurate. Okay. All right. So moving on. Now, we all do this, I'm assuming, right? Because there's that big red message when you go to migrate student daily attendance that says, pull the missing attendance report. So this is important to do, especially before the end of the year. So under reports, daily attendance, and then missing attendance, there is this missing attendance report. And you always want to do this, especially before migrating your data, but especially at the end of the year. So you have the option of doing just a month, are certain months or the entire school year. So depending on the size of your district, if you have a very large district, it may take a little bit to run if you do the whole school year. So on this report that I pulled here, you can see these are the attendance records through 5/22 of 23. So that's telling me that the data has been loaded up to 5/22. Well, now today is the 6th of June, right? So I would be having I'm missing attendance all the way up to the June 6th. But if this was the end of the year, that would be something I would make sure that I have all my attendance loaded first, first make sure that's all loaded. But then on this particular example, and these are made up PII names, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's telling me that I'm missing 17 records. And we put the name in here because I wanted to point out it might not be 17 students that have errors, right? In this case, it's one student and it's multiple days. So each day is going to have a line, a record, if you will. In this case, we would need to look back at the student's enrollment and see why we're missing attendance for these particular days and correct whatever the issue is there, because we don't want to migrate any missing attendance, because that will be counted, the student, when it goes to level 2, will be counted as absent towards your chronic absenteeism. We don't want that. So this is always a good report to check. All right. So changing gears from level 0 to level 1 now, I'm going to briefly go into these because I have discussed them in past meetings. But just the level 1C and data quality report card, and these are both found on level 1, so you need level 1 access. But what's a plus about both of these is that you can see multiple domains in one report. So that's very convenient. And so just starting with the L1C, it's useful, and you always want to check this after you migrate your level 0 data. So after a nightly refresh, after migrating, you want to go into the L1C error reports, because there could be warnings or there could be true errors. So warnings will they will not stop your data from migrating, but it's something you want to look into, make sure your data is accurate. Whereas if there's an error, then that does need to be resolved, because your data for that particular item is not going to be migrating to level 2 until that is corrected. For those of you that are new to L1C errors, if you see a student that is erroring on everything, like they have a ton of errors, and one of those errors in the mix is going to say something like no state ID found or something along those lines. Usually when that happens, the student is in your nicest near match queue. So they don't have a nicest ID. So they're going to error on everything that is tried to be migrated. So any data that's trying to be migrated. So it's always best when you see that to go to your near match and see if there's something resolved that needs to be resolved. If they were in your near match queue, then maybe we just need to allow a little bit of time for that to catch up, and then they'll drop off of your L1C report. But otherwise, your data quality report card, you can look at all your domains. You can zoom in on just a particular one. So it depends what you're looking for, but if it's at the end of the year, it's recommended to pull everything so you could look at it all in one shot. And it's color coded. And if you're having your team help you verify, as Pam mentioned, sometimes you can send out parts of the report to certain areas to look at it. But level 1 is a good tool. It's a great resource. We use it for lots of stuff, right? But level 2 is really the be all end all. So you want to always, for end of year, make sure that you're verifying, doing your final verification on any level 2 reports. But this will help you with your data quality along the way. Okay.
Pam,
Yes.
just 2 cents.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
recently did a comparison. Now we all know we have import errors at level 0, verification errors at level 0, informational errors at level 0,
Yes.
L1C errors.
Yes.
And
a
I
lot.
recently did a comparison for a particular district of level 0 informational errors versus L1C errors. And if you've worked with these before, you know that there is overlap between the two. That both level 0 informational errors and level 1C errors will identify the same potential issues. I just want to point out to you that although there's overlap, there are some errors that only appear in level 0 informational reports and some errors that only appear in the level 1C reports. So it's a good idea because we all love to look at more error reports, but it's a good idea to always check both. There is a difference between what's reported in level 0 informational and level 1C. Just FYI.
Great. Thank you, Pam.
Sure.
All right.
And Sam, I do think it's important also just to emphasize that on the level 1C, if it's a warning, and even the level 0 information errors, they're potential. So
Mhm.
there could be some that are listed there just to bring it to your attention, but they may be fine as is when you do look into it. On the
Yes.
level 1C, of course, it will say, error or warning. But again, just to be aware of that there might not need to be a fix to everything you're seeing on either of those.
Yes. Good point. Very good point. All right. So I'm going to move on to level 2. Now, Pam mentioned this a little bit in reference to graduates. The reasonableness report, the SIRS 401, great tool to verify not only the end of year, but throughout the year. So this could help us realize, maybe we're missing, I don't know, L's or something, any program. So it's easy to look down the list and say, okay, this looks good, but what is difficult sometimes is to find what's missing or incomplete. So you want to spend your time really drilling down into these and making sure that your data is accurate. So as similar to level 0 before, with the 10% change, it'll be in red. So it's a red flag in a way to review your data, letting you know to look closely at it. So I only put the screenshot here of programs, but there's many subgroups that you can look at: enrollment, exit, and it's best practice to really look those over and verify them before the end of the year, and see if any are missing that you need to report. Okay. All right. So lastly, this is my last slide here. I'm just going to talk about the UIAS. So Unique Identifier Audit Summary Report. It's a SIRS 701. Again, should be reviewed. Now, this report starts refreshing in November on a daily basis. So this is something, because your end of year is pretty full, right? It's something you can add earlier in your school year on your calendar to start looking at and resolving. Just to get ahead of some of these, because it will catch a lot of enrollment issues or potential enrollment issues. Maybe like false transfers, dropouts, disappearing students, simultaneously enrolled. There's all different scenarios that you could see on here. And it does take, especially if you're a larger district, it could take some time to really go through this report and dig into the issues and find out, if you have to reach out to other departments or potentially other districts. But before you reach out to other districts, just make sure you're really doing your due diligence and checking your district records. You want to make sure that it's not your district that needs an update. And after really digging into some of these, you may find that they're going to remain on your report for the rest of the year. There are some scenarios where they're just going to stay on there, and that's okay. But as long as you keep record, if you are pulling this every month or so, so you don't have to re-look into a particular situation, that's always a good thing to do, is just to keep track of what you've already researched. So if you haven't reviewed this report yet, I recommend checking it out. But otherwise, I don't think I see any other questions. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah from Special Services. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam. So my name is Sarah. I'm with the Special Services team along with Sean Cheatham and our newest member, Samantha Viaz. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and talk about our special ed indicators. So first, we're going to cover some updates that we have. The indicator workshops are currently being held virtually. They started in May and they're going to be continuing through June. And they've been being held with your special ed office staff members. Currently, next up is our end of year workshops. So those are going great. And then this says as of May 31st, but I actually did verify this morning that the 22-23 end of year reports are still not yet available in the PD system. However, there was a notification on the page stating that they should be available mid-June. No specific date, but they did say they would make email notifications when it is available. And then following on these slides, we do have their various certification dates. I just wanted to let you know that they are subject to change. We have seen it in the past, so just keep that in mind. And then lastly, I'm going to briefly touch on some new resubmission requirements from New York State Ed on the next slide. So recently in May, New York State Ed came out and announced that they were having certain districts resubmit their indicator 11 or their indicator 12 information for last year. In addition, they were going to have them resubmit data for the current school year. I just want to make it clear that this is not applicable to all districts that had indicator 11 or 12 due last year. It was only a select few, and they were notified directly by New York State Ed, and then the MHRIC followed up with them to help them with this resubmission process. The newest word from New York State Ed is that this appears to be a new initiative that they will continue in future years. So if your district has 11 or 12 due this year or in the coming years, this could be a potential that you'll have to resubmit your data the following year. So just keep that in mind. And our next slide. Thank you. So our import schedule, as I just mentioned, these reports are not yet available in the PD system. So our import schedule for these extract has not started as of yet. They will be starting June 16th. So that's when you'll start to see your assessment and your COSIF extract, your end of year snapshot, and your SC events appear in level 0. And again, they will happen on a daily basis. So every day after June 16th is when we can expect to see that information. And they'll run all the way through till our certification deadlines for these various indicators. So now we're going to cover the special indicators that your district may or may not have due. Starting with all of the indicators that the information is coming directly from Frontline IEP. So first off is our indicator 7, also known as our VR15. And what this is your preschool child outcomes summary form, also known as the COSIF. So we did get a question earlier about what the COSIF is. This is the indicator that is related to that. The extract that it's referred to is called the assessment COSIF. So that's what it'll be known as in level 0. So if your district is one of the districts on the screen, you do have indicator 7 due, and you will be seeing that in your level 0. And your certification date for this one is August 7th, 2023. Next up, we have our indicator 11, also known as our verification report 11. And what this is your child find timely evaluations and eligibility for both preschool and school age special ed students. So this is quite a large indicator. If you've done it recently or you're having it done this year, you are aware of the vast amount of students that this covers. Your certification date for this is September 18th, 2023. Again, the source of information for this is coming out of Frontline IEP in your SC events extract. And in level 0, it is a part of that SC event. And the districts on the screen are the ones that currently have it due for the 22-23 school year. Next up, we have our indicator 12 or our verification report 12. And this is specifically looking at early childhood transition. So that's your early intervention students who are being referred to preschool special education. So this is a smaller demographic of students that this indicator is taking a look at. The certification date is the same, September 18th, 2023. Again, the source of this is our Frontline IEP, a part of the SE events extract. In level 0, it's going to be our SE event. And the districts that have it due for the 22-23 school year are currently on your screen. Now we have our verification report 14. Also known as the parentally placed in a non-public schools. So this is looking at your report of parentally placed students in non-public schools who have been evaluated. The certification date for this is September 18th, 2023. Again, your source system is Frontline IEP. It's also a part of the SE event extract / the parentally placed non-public school students. And in level 0, it's going to be in your SE event. Now, something I do want to notate, this is for all districts. However, not all districts have non-public schools within their district. So if you are one of those districts, you do not have any non-public schools, you will still have to certify, but lucky you, it'll just be a lot easier and you'll just have to certify 0. That's already available in the PD system. I do think we just skipped over the end of year. Thank you. So lastly, for information coming out of Frontline IEP, this is your end of year snapshot. So this is specific for preschool children who were provided special ed programs and services during the current school year. Now, all districts have this due. This is not one of the fancy indicators that your district rotates every few years. This one, all districts have due every year. The certification date for this one is August 7th, 2023. And out of Frontline IEP and into level 0, it's your end of year snapshot or your EOY snapshot. And now we're going to be talking about the other special ed information related indicators, but they don't necessarily come out of Frontline IEP. So we have indicator 8, which is your parent involvement indicator. So that's the parent survey. The source for this is going to be from your special ed office. It is coordinated by a third party. So your district has most likely already heard from that third party, which is the Potsdam Institute for Research. And the districts below on the screen are the districts who currently have that due for this year. Then we have our indicators 13 and indicators 14. So indicator 13 is your secondary transition. Indicator 14 is your post-school outcomes. So the reason why these are on the same slide is because these indicators are performed by your district together. So if you're one of the districts on the bottom of my screen here, you will have to submit 13 and 14 this year. And again, it's coming from a third party. So your district has most likely already heard from the Potsdam Institute for Applied Research in regards to how to get this information. Indicator 13, just to review, it's a submit self-review checklist, and the 14, that's your post-school outcomes. And then we have our suspension data, also known as the PD8. So this is reporting full day suspensions for students with disabilities. Your certification date for this is August 21st, 2023. And something I want to notate is you can pull this information out of Frontline IEP if your district stores their or reports their suspension data into Frontline IEP. Not all districts do, and that's okay. Some districts have another program that they use specifically for suspensions, or they're just putting their suspension data into their student management system. Either way, you will still have to report on your suspension data, whether extracting it from Frontline or manually entering it into the PD system. Then we have our VR16. So this is for your coordinated early intervening services or your comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. So the certification date for VR16 is August 7th, 2023. And I'm actually going to move to the next slide because I have a little bit more data over there. So only a few districts have to report this year. And if you're unaware, what this indicator is reporting on is if your district voluntarily or has been required by New York State to use at least up to 15% of your IDEA funds for coordinated early intervening services or comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. If you're ever not aware if your district is using those funds for these services, you can reach out to whoever is responsible for your grants at your school, because that is where this money is coming from. Or if you ever wanted to double check with us, we can help you look into that as well. As you can see on the screen, currently for this school year, there's only 3 districts that do have to report, and they're all voluntarily using these funds. Nobody has been required as of recently. And then this is just sort of your due dates at a glance. Michelle did talk about them earlier. We have them in our slides here specifically for your special ed indicators. Just keep in mind, as Michelle mentioned, these are your certification dates, but you also want to remember your migration dates. That's going to be a few days sooner than the certification dates, the Wednesday before. So keep that in mind, as these certification dates, I believe they're all on a Monday. So just notate that. And moving on from the special indicators, we're going to be talking about your Title I data. So specifically your ESEA Title I Part A data. So for your district, depending on what you report, could be your targeted assistance or your school-wide. So authorizations did go out to our districts that utilize our services for Frontline RTI and RTI Edge in December, and a number of those have come back to us. So the extracts for this data began in January 2023. Your certification date for this data is August 21st, 2023. And something that I want to notate is we will only pull it for you if you have sent us the authorization and if you're a Frontline RTI or an RTI Edge district. If you are noticing that you fall into this category and your Title I data is not in there, specifically your ESEA Title I Part A, please reach out to us. We'll take a look into it, see if your district actually has returned their authorization form. And if they have, we'll see what we can do for you. And then just some websites. As we talked about before, these certification dates are subject to change, so we like you to have the links to that information as well. Additionally, we have the information right to the state ed websites about your indicators, more information on them, what you have due, what's coming up, and all that information that you might like to have at your fingertips. And then our contact information. So you can reach any one of the members at the Special Services team via our joint email. That's specialservices@mhric.org, or we have our joint extension right below that. Myself, Sarah Cross, Sean Cheatham, and our newest member, Samantha Viez, we're all more than willing and able to answer any of your questions that you may have. So thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think our team is going to take it back from you now. And starting off with Michelle, talking about all things staff.
Thanks, Helen. Yes, it's time to talk about staff data. So, and with a particular lens of it's the end of the year. So what should I be kind of looking at and focusing on and making sure to verify? So on the next slide, what am I verifying? Well, it's showing you the specific reports you want to be looking at in level 2. So those are the SIRS 320 staff snapshot, SIRS 318 is staff assignment, SIRS 324 is staff attendance, and the SIRS 322 is staff tenure. So you want to make sure that as you're looking at these reports, that your data is both complete and accurate. So that's what you want to strive for here. I think was mentioned earlier. I mean, you can send data through and it can pass all the error checks, but that may not mean that it's complete and accurate. So you want to make sure that you're doing those checks. And if you need to work with your HR department to ensure that all the data is extracting correctly. If you are supported by the MHRIC, you can contact our financial services department for additional assistance and resolving any issues. And their contact info is on the slide. All right, so on the next slide, a little bit about some specific scenarios and the end of the year. So what about, you have staff that are going to retire or resign this year. So within Staff Snapshot, you want to make sure that all staff who retired or leave the district on or before June 30th, that you update their records with their exit date. You want to make sure that you do this so that when it comes around to next year, that you're not accidentally pulling in those staff members that have left. And likewise on staff assignments, there is an exit date, and if those particular staff that are retiring or leaving the district, you can also put an exit date on their staff assignment record if they have one. All right, so moving on. So staff on leave for the entire year. So update, those records for those staff who may be on leave. Next is something that happens less frequently. It's often overlooked. If you have a staff member who was out on leave, you want to make sure that, first of all, they're not required to be reported if they were on leave for the entire year. But if they were reported, you want to make sure you're not including years in district and total years of experience in that calculation for the next year. So take a look at, again, Staff Snapshot is in SIRS 320 to verify. All right, so let's move on to staff assignment. So in staff assignment, you want to look at all that information, but in particular, you want to look at principals. You want to make sure that each building in your district has a principal assigned for each grade level within those buildings as well. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you're seeing the assignment codes for principals, just as a refresher and reminder. Okay, and the SIRS 318 is where you can be looking at that information. Now, also with staff assignments, SED is looking at certain titles, right? You may have heard from us throughout the year. They've been doing some outreach, and we've been letting you know because they want to make sure that if you have staff that are guidance counselors, librarians, nurses, and social workers, that those are being reported properly and accurately for all of your buildings. And on the right side of the screen, there's a couple of things that go along with that. And these things that I'm going to speak about don't just apply to those particular roles, but all or any that you're reporting in staff assignment. So if a staff member is assigned to more than one building, now in Staff Snapshot, you may have them listed under the location, the district location. But in staff assignment, they really need a staff assignment record for a separate staff assignment record for each building that they're working in. It is really not acceptable to have the district location because it doesn't say where they're working, and when it gets reported to the state, it doesn't look like they're assigned to a particular building or that you have someone in a particular building with any of those roles. So again, Staff Snapshot, if they work in more than one building, it's fine to use the district location, but in staff assignment, you really want a separate assignment record for each building that staff member is working in. Also, when it comes to grades and staff assignment, grade levels, the default really is all, that a staff member works with all grade levels in a building, but you may have some staff that do not work with all grade levels. Perhaps you have a guidance counselor, and that guidance counselor, maybe they work with just 11th and 12th graders at the high school. So it really isn't appropriate to use the all grade level when reporting that staff assignment record. They should have a separate record, one that says grade 11 and one that says grade 12 in the same building. So those are the things you want to look for, and you want to make those updates and corrections as you need to. And also plan ahead. What we're hearing is that there'll even be more focus on these particular titles next year, and that SED is going to be looking for all staff in these roles to have teach IDs. So even itinerant staff in these roles, and even nurses who are contracted through outside agencies. So something to plan for the upcoming 23-24 school year. All right. So now staff attendance. So with staff attendance, you want to make sure that you have all your staff attendance up through June 30th. As we get to the end of the year, you want to make sure that's all reported by the end of the year deadline. Verify if there are, especially if there are any issues or something doesn't look reasonable, make sure that your mapping in the source system is correct to one of the appropriate state codes. There are only certain attendance codes that are used at the state level. You have B for bereavement, J for jury duty, M for maternity, O for other, P for personal, and S for sick. These are all in the SIRS manual. Those are the specific SED staff attendance codes. And your source system, you may use other local codes, and things have to be mapped. So make sure things are mapped accurately. Another area that you can check is actually in level 0. So if you look at level 0 in the information reports and you run that for staff attendance, something that you're going to be seeing now that they started to take a look at and put in is you'll see a potential problem saying no staff attendance time reported for this teacher. So we kind of call it the perfect attendance report. And again, it's something to look at. Perhaps they were, in there every day. They did have perfect attendance. If they did, no other action is necessary. But sometimes this points to potential issues. Maybe it was a staff member that shouldn't have been reported at all this year, or possibly something was missed within attendance. So it's a good place to look for that. And again, the level 2 report you want to be using for staff attendance is the SIRS 324.
Michelle,
Yes.
I just wanted to add one comment on that.
Sure.
Remember, we're only reporting full day absences.
Full day absences. Mhm.
So if they're out for a half a day and they only ever take half day absences, they could show up with perfect attendance.
Yeah, and I think that I saw a comment come up from Joan that they should get an award. Maybe they should. The students get perfect attendance awards, right? So why not the teachers? Okay. Staff tenure. So you want to make sure that you have your tenure records, that they're expected for staff reported as teacher or principal, and the staff snapshot. And you also want to make sure that you're reporting staff that are not on a tenure track with a status code of not tenure eligible, or the not 10 elig code that you see there. And was there a question? I see something that popped up.
You have a question from Stacy. What is an example of a staff member that is not on a tenure year track?
Your long-term subs. These may include your long-term subs. So if you have a long-term sub, they're not on a tenure track, but they're connected and attached to a course, then you want to make sure that you're reporting them with that tenure status. For those records, they need an effective date, and the effective date can be even the first date that they were assigned to that course as a long-term sub. But they don't need the probationary start and end dates. That's not required on that record. And the tenure area that you would use should match the area for the teacher that they're filling in for. That's acceptable on those particular records. I did see a couple other things pop
Michelle,
up.
I'm gonna take you back to staff assignment. A question from Shannon. If they are in more than one building, we have been reporting at the district level.
Mhm.
So does that need to change for 23-24 to have multiple assignments covering each specific building?
That is technically what SED would like to see. They do not want to see the district location being used. They want to see the actual building locations. You know, especially for those titles that are listed. I would strive to do it for those titles I have listed on this screen. I know that what we heard was that if it's not possible to get that all accomplished this year, to make sure that it's done for next year. So I would say the goal is to strive to get it done this year, especially for those titles that are listed, but that make sure that it's being done next year.
Okay, and a follow-up to that from
Mhm.
Sherry. For staff snapshot, you should use the district building for teachers that are shared between two buildings.
If a teacher teaches in more than one location, or a staff member, you know, works in more than one location, in staff snapshot, since you only can have one record for any staff member in staff snapshot, it is acceptable to use the district location there. However, in staff assignment, you need an assignment record that specifically indicates each building that that staff member is assigned to.
Okay, she's got it, and I just want to offer the perspective that since your school report card shows, you know, number of teachers assigned to a building, this is why it's important to have the multiple staff assignments. For example, if you have a social worker who's reported as a district employee, but actually works between two different elementary schools, if your staff assignment record says district, both of those elementary schools will appear to not have a social worker assigned. This is why you want to have an assignment record for each building. So then it will show that that building is covered by a social worker or nurse or librarian.
Right. So I think I spoke to some of that in the last DDC meeting as to where some of the staff data ends up when it's reported publicly on data.nice.gov. And so some of this information does make it there, and it is important to make this distinction in staff assignment so that you know those buildings are being covered with those, especially with those particular roles. So thanks, Pam.
Sure.
All right, any other questions?
One popped up.
There are any roles that are listed in the SIRS manual. You want to make sure that you're reporting for the non-teaching professionals, you want to make sure that you're reporting a staff snapshot and staff assignment record for them. So in the SIRS manual, all of the assignment codes are listed, and the rule of thumb has always been if there is an assignment record there in the SIRS manual, you want to make sure that you're reporting a staff member in that role if you have that staff in your district.
Okay, we actually have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So from Gabby, would the superintendent/assistant superintendent be reported separately in assignment to each building as well?
No, if they're an admin and they deal with all buildings, then that's fine. All buildings and all grades, that's not an issue. We're talking about when they're assigned, a staff member is assigned to a particular building and they, have only certain grades within that building, or a staff member that's only assigned to a subset, like a couple of buildings within the district that has, 5 buildings.
Thank you. And one more from Delma. Does this apply to BOCES?
Yes, it applies to all districts and BOCES that are reporting staff.
And I lied. There's one more. Are the business management systems able to handle the multiple locations this way?
You'll have to work with your HR, with your source systems, whoever you're supported through, to see how that can be handled and if that can be handled.
And I believe, I've worked with my districts, and I believe that the systems they use are capable of doing that.
All right, any other questions there? And one thing, other thing I'll mention is that, you know, when it comes to the end of the year and you're making these changes, a lot of times it's very easy to jump into level 0 and make these changes manually. But what you really want to make sure that you do is go back to the source system with these changes as well. You want to make sure that if you're putting in exit dates, for example, that it is getting back to the source system, that's so that when you start reporting for 23, 24, you're not bringing in erroneous data. Okay.
I don't see any more questions, so I don't think we can procrastinate any
I
longer.
know we
on
have to go
talking
to
about
staff
staff eval. They
evaluation.
did a good job of you know. Thank you, everybody, but we're gonna do it anyway.
I mean, staff eval never really went away completely, but it is making a return in the sense that at the last couple of years, it was kind of sort of optional, right? But it is back full force this year, and it is expected that all districts will report a staff evaluation. So sorry to be the bearer of that news, but that is the case. So each district handles staff eval differently. As the data coordinator, if you are not directly involved in the evaluation process, you will want to reach out to the person or persons who are. They will need to let you know the scores and ratings to submit based on your district's APPR plan. Every district has their own APPR plan. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You will want to communicate with them about what source system, if any, you use to track this information, and if the source system has built-in extracts that can be used to import staff eval into level 0. And more to come on that a little bit later. But let's start with a look at important dates. Then we'll look at some resources and some background on the APPR process. All right, so we have some dates here that you want to kind of keep in mind. So between June 5th and August 25th, LEAs must submit an APPR implementation form. And this form is located on SCD, the monitoring and performance area on the application business portal, otherwise known as SEDMON. So it's for those staff who have access to that particular area on the business portal, and you get access to these areas through SEDAS. And it's the same area where the APPR plan and that information is stored. So if you do not have access, you will want to, again, kind of collaborate with the person or persons who do, and make sure that they're submitting that form. July 3rd, I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting this morning, that is when the staff evaluation collection opens for this year, for the 22-23 school year. September 1st, that is the day, if you read there, that the evaluation information has to be given out to your teachers and principals within the district. So it says 22-23 educator evaluations should be completed and provided to all applicable teachers and principals as soon as practicable, but in no case later than September 1st. October 20th is the next date, and I spoke about that this morning as well. That is your submission deadline for staff eval, but the LEAs are encouraged to submit as early as possible. And on some of the documentation, you'll see the resources when I get to the next slide. They are even saying August 18th as the target date. But again, officially, it's October 20th, which would mean in level 0, the Wednesday prior, so October 18th at noon. And then this does have its own certification. So I had mentioned this in the beginning with our list of dates. October 27th is the due date for the certification form. And this certification form is also in SEDMON. And then it needs to be accessed there and submitted there as well from there. All right, so here are a list of some resources that I use in pulling this all together. So the first group, you have some closeout reminders. There's a PowerPoint in there. There's an FAQ in there. The top bullet is the page where you'll see some of these other items listed, those sub-bullets. And then the second is a general guidance about 3012D. So these are all excellent resources to take a look at if you have any questions. There is more there as well, but these were the key ones, that I used and that you'll probably want to take a look at. All right, so I know we have some folks that are brand new to this process and some folks that have been here a while. And you may recall that in 2019, there was an amendment, right, to 3012D and to the APPR process. And the 2019 amendment to Education Law 3012D excluded the use of grades 3 to 8 in New York State ELA and math state assessments from teacher and principal evaluation, and superseded transition regulations. So first, that means transition scores have been eliminated. So if you have been around a while and you remember all the scores we had to report, there was all ones that started with R for required. There was all ones that started with T for transition. Well, guess what? The ones that start with T for transition are gone. Okay, so there are no transition scores. And a note about the 3 to 8 New York State ELA. Yes, those are excluded, but SLOs based on Regents exams, NISA, NISA slot, or New York State science assessments are not excluded. Okay, so those can still be used. All right, so when it comes to educators and their scores and ratings, each educator should have only one set of evaluation scores and ratings. Like I said, the transition scores have been eliminated. So these scores and ratings are determined based on the measures in task 2 and 7 of the LEA's approved evaluation plan, variance, and/or supplemental form. So task 2 or 7, they're referring to your APPR plan. So let's just talk a little bit about APPR plans on the next slide. All right, so these are the plan types, including variances and removal forms. So you could have a plan, an APPR plan in your district that was approved under Education Law 3012D prior to 1/1/2020. And in those plans, there could be a required student performance score based on original measures that will be calculated for those educators whose measures do not incorporate grades 3 to 8 ELA and math. And then the required student performance scores would be based on alternate SLOs for those educators whose measures do incorporate grade 3 to 8 New York State ELA math assessments. Or 2, your plan could be under Education Law 3012D as amended in 2019 after 1/1/2020. And for those, all evaluations will be based on the measures and assessments included in task 2 and 7 of the evaluation plan. Or 3, your evaluation, your APPR plan and the evaluation could include variances or removal forms, and those would be used in conjunction with one of the 2 plans listed above. So the measure in the evaluation plan would be replaced by any corresponding measures, evidence, or assessment, including in the approved variance or form. Okay. So that's a little bit about how the plans are put together. So if you want to know more about your APPR plan, where would you look? Well, if you want to see the entire plan, that is located at the link at the top. So that would be something that you could search for by your district, and you would be, or BOCES, and you would be able to see your entire plan. Now, what SED does is they provide summaries of the plan. So you're not looking at the entire plan. What they will do is focus in the summary just on the necessary elements for score distribution and for data submission. So for your reporting information. And this year, which is new for 22-23, these summaries have been posted to the SED monitoring area on the business portal. So the summary can be found in the inbox in the educator quality section where they work on, where you work on your APPR plans. They have been made for available, and they should be there. And again, for anyone that has access to that particular area. And as I mentioned, additional users can be added through SETUS if necessary. Now, we have heard that they may also be posting these to the IRS portal. They're not there yet. So again, to look at those summaries, you're going to want to look into the SED monitoring area. We've also heard that some LEAs still have outstanding, plans that have not been approved as of yet. I don't know, we don't have a list of any of those, so I'm not aware of any of those within our region. But we were told that if you go to look for a summary and you see a placeholder note there instead of the summary, that's going to mean that it's outstanding and has not yet been approved. All right, so that gives you a little bit of a background, if you will, as to, where we are with all of that, and, where you're going to look to see your particular district's APPR plan, because it's going to vary district to district. Once you look at that and look to see task 2 and 7, what are the data elements that have to get reported? So now we're talking about what is going to be reported to the data warehouse, which is SIRS. So when it comes to reporting, the data elements here fall into 3 categories. So you have the student performance category, you have the teacher observation, principal school visit category, and then you have the overall rating. The scores here on the slides are the only ones that should be reported, and 2 of them are optional, as we'll talk about in just a moment. So if you don't have those optional pieces as part of your APPR plan, then it's really only 3 scores and ratings that are expected to be reported through staff eval. It would be only a max of 5 if you have those optional components. All right, so in the student performance category, and those are going to have a score associated with them from 0 to 20. That is where you're going to see the REQSP, which is the required student performance subcomponent score. And that's going to be based on an SLO or an alternate SLO, again, as dictated by your district's APPR plan. All right. Also within this category, if your district has the optional piece, and again, you'll have to refer to your summary or your district's APPR plan for this. That is the OPTSP, which is the optional student performance subcomponent score. Again, it says as applicable, and that would be a locally selected measure of student growth. All right, and then the second category is the teacher observation and principal school visit category, which is going to be a score between 1 and 4. And that is where you will see the REQOB. So these codes that I'm giving you, that's what you're going to see in your extracts and what you're going to see in level 0. And we'll have some examples of that coming up. So the REQOB is the required observation school visit subcomponent score. And you can see combined principal, supervisor, other trained administrator, and impartial independent trained evaluator. So there's evaluations that are going on there, obviously. And then you have the OPTOB, and that is the optional observation score if your district has that as part of your APPR plan. And then you have the overall rating component. So that's a rating only. So the student and teacher, student performance and teacher observation have scores associated with that, but the overall just has a rating. And this is an OCR rating, and you'll see how it'll contain a number after that in just a moment. This is based on the evaluation matrix, and we'll look to the matrix in just a moment, but it's based on what they call a HIDE matrix. And so HIDE, the H is for highly effective, and that will be OCR 04. The E is for effective, and that will be OCR 03. The D is for developing, and that will be OCR 02. And the I is for ineffective, and that will be OCR 01. So yes, we want to look to the matrix, but actually matrices. So here we have at the top, we have the student performance HIDE table, and then we have a HIDE table for the teacher observation and principal school visit category. Okay, so for the student performance HIDE, and this is the same. There's a different form from New York City, but for the rest of the state, this is the HIDE table that is used. So your district uses your APPR plan to come up with a score from 0 to 20, right? When that score is calculated, you then would look to this HIDE table to determine what is their rating based on that score. So if it was between 18 and 20, that's H for highly effective. 15 to 17, that's effective, so forth and so on. Then if you look over to the teacher observation, you will see, again, the HIDE rating. And here it's a little bit different because if you look at the H, for example, it says 3.5 to 3.75 to 4, all right? And they're saying that's the H for highly effective. Now, in the minimum, there is a range because that is going to be different or can be different based on your district's APPR plan. So there is a range that can be used there. So you have to look to your summary or your APPR plan to see what the range is for each of these levels, right? So once you determine the HIDE level for student performance and then the HIDE level for teacher observation, then you can come to the matrix at the bottom, which is your overall rating, right? So if you look along the left-hand side, that is for student performance, and across the top is for observation. So where they meet is how you're going to determine an overall rating. So for example, if a teacher was effective in student performance and got an E there, and they were highly effective in their observation, so you would come over to the E for effective student performance, and then for the observation, then you would see that the overall rating would be H for highly effective. Okay, so if they were D for developing for student performance and E for teacher observation, come down to D, go over to E, and you would see their overall rating would be E effective. So that's how you would utilize that overall rating matrix to determine the overall rating that gets reported. All right, so the next slide is just, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's just an at a glance condensed version of some of the things I already spoke about. And you will see that in some of the resource materials that I had listed there for you. All right, what I do want to move on to is the next slide, where we're talking now, okay, once the APPR process is complete and you have access to the scores and ratings, this is where the fun part begins in terms of reporting. So it's time to get an extract together that contains the data in the proper eScholar template format. So if your source system has a built-in extract, that's great. But we have found in years past that either your your system does not have any kind of built-in extract, or perhaps it does, but it's not, giving that information in the proper way that you need it, then you might have to build your own import file. And again, this is based on the eScholar template. So if you were to build your own, you would want to start in Excel. So the top, top item here shows you an Excel file, and you would put in the fields as dictated by the template. So we have the district code first, then followed by the staff ID. I want to talk a little bit about that because you'll see that in column B, you see a staff ID, and in column N, you see alternate staff ID. In level 0, your district will have where the teach ID is supposed to go, either in the staff ID for 2 or in the alternate ID, which I think is that 14 or whatever. So if you're not sure, you can ask us about that, but your teach ID is going to go either in that staff ID field or an alternate staff ID, but not in both, right? So you have your district code, you have your teach ID, and then you have a field for your evaluation criteria code. So this is where you're going to put in those particular codes that need to be reported that I was talking about, the REQ SP, you can see REQ OB, and you can see the OCR 04. And these are all for the same, and it should be, I'm not sure if it's coming up that way. It might be incorrect on the slide in terms of the teach ID. It's supposed to be the same teach ID. So it's for the same teacher. So one teacher will have multiple records for each part of this score that's being submitted. So that's why you're seeing the REQSP, REQOB, and the OCR 04. There are a couple of fields that must be in there. The school leader date and the reporting date, which are both 6/30. And then if you're looking at the template, there are certain fields that are there, but we're not reporting. So they're blank, and they're blank on purpose. And there's the evaluation criteria rating code, which has to have an NA in it. That's by default. So you're following that template. And then H has the evaluation criteria rating points. So REQSP, that has points associated with it. So there's a 20. REQOB, that's your observation. That was between 1 and 4. There you're seeing the 4.00. Now with the overall rating, remember that's a rating only. So we're not seeing any points in column H. Everything that we need to know is within the code itself, right? So OCR 04 is already telling us that's highly effective, right? So we don't need any points there. It's simply a rating. And then we have a bunch of blank fields. And again, the alternate staff ID, if you need to put it there, the teach ID. And then the last field is 3012D. So this is how it would be set up as a template if you need to create your own staff eval import to, extract import for level 0. And once you create it in Excel and you have all the components in there, save it as an Excel file. So you have that source file to go back to. But in order to bring it in to level 0, you need to save it as a CSV. Now, it's very important too, even before I mention that in Excel, you want to make sure that you save everything in the proper format. In other words, the teach ID has to have 9 characters, so you have to have it 0 filled. The date has to be in the proper format, the YYY, Y-MM-DD. So there's a format that you must use, and you must save that. And then save it as a CSV file to preserve those formats. Once you save it as a CSV file, do not then open up the CSV file by just double clicking on it, because that will open it up most likely in Excel, and you'll lose all that formatting that you put in. So the best advice there is just to right click on it and say open in Notepad. And on the bottom, you're seeing an example of this converted and as a CSV file and what that's going to look like for you. If you have a text file, as an import file, sometimes you will also see, because a text file can be brought in as well, you'll see quotes around that. Okay. All right. So, once you have
Can
that.
I butt in there for one
Sure.
moment, Michelle? Thank you. I did want to bring attention to the Excel and CSV files and making a TXT or CSV to bring in to level 0. If you don't have an export that that you can import, without any additions or subtractions in there, you definitely want to make sure that your the header row is no longer included. So if you open up your CSV file and you see things that say district code, staff ID, evaluation criteria code in the first line there, you would want to get rid of that before you import it, because if you import it with the headers in it, it will not import into level 0.
Thanks, Helen. I did have that as a note to mention, but I think I overlooked that. So thank you. And also, another thing, even if you have a source system that has a built-in extract, make sure that you look at it before you import it. So even if you extract a file and you have that file, do the same thing, open it up, view it in Notepad, and take a closer look at it, because sometimes with the different source systems, that you're putting in the evaluation data, it may include extra things in there that you don't want to import. You want to look to make sure that all of the values and all of the codes that you're seeing are appropriate, because a lot of times, if you import it straight, you're going to get a bunch of errors because for some reason there were still scores that had T in front of it, or there were codes that were used that weren't even valid codes, or sometimes those extracts, when it doesn't have all its components, for a particular teacher, they put in different things to represent that. So even if you have an extract from a source system, there's a good chance you might have to do some cleanup before you're ready to import it. So again, that's just a tip. Even if you have an extract, take a look at it before you bring in that data. I think there were a couple of questions, right?
Questions for you. Sherry says she loves the Excel template. Can you please include it with the post-meeting files that I get emailed out? Can you also include a sample teacher like you have in the screenshot here? Thank you.
Sure, we can certainly do that. And one of the things that I was going to mention is that, the data team, my team, do plan on offering assistance as you work through staff eval. So, and they may be in the form of on-demand, online tutorials or live Zoom sessions or both. Stay tuned, but I can certainly do that for you, Sherry, and send that out to everyone. So thank you.
Okay, and another one from Deborah. Is it possible to put staff eval data in level 0 before June 30th? I know I haven't tried yet.
I haven't tried yet. They said the collection opens up July 3rd. So I don't know if, there would be any issue, or if they're still working on anything, not just in level 0, but working on anything further up the chain, further up the path.
Yeah, I guess I'd only be concerned about the edit checks, that they're accurate at this point in time based on this current year's.
And that they would even make it to level 2. Sometimes they're making different changes there as well. So I would probably wait until at least July 3rd.
Yes.
If I hear anything different, I will certainly let you know, or let everyone know.
Okay, and finally from Gabby, I see you found the letter scores in the Heidi scale. However, how is the evaluation criteria code determined? Where did you get this?
So Gabby, again, those two for student performance and teacher observation, those you're going to look to your district's APPR plan or your APPR summary. And again, this is going to be different for each district. So in there, it's going to tell you what's used to determine those scores. And then the district has to, whoever works with that, they have to keep track of and calculate those scores. And then based on those scores for the performance, student performance, the 0 to 20, or for the observation, the 1 to 4, that's determined and calculated at the district level based on those plans. And then you use those matrices to further get the overall rating. All right, I hope that answers the question. So more, you're going to have to look at your own individual APPR plan or APPR summary to figure out what you have that was approved by the state, what you're supposed to be using, and you'll have to calculate it using those measures. All right, are there any other questions here?
I just see a comment from Joan that they're working with education analytics.
Okay, very good. All right, so once you have the CSV file or your source system file, you can import it into level 0. That import process is like many of our other import processes, so I didn't bring that up. But here is what the manual entry screens look like for level 0, just so you see that and how that data is being brought in. Of course, you can enter things manually, although that's not generally recommended. But sometimes you need to come in to clean up errors as well. So I wanted you to see what that looks like in level 0. So the top, for REQSP and REQOB, you can see you would come in, you would pick a staff member, then you would pick the evaluation type. So there's a drop down, and you can see the drop down above here and to the right of the purple bars there. So you would pick your evaluation type, REQSP. It would populate the criteria code, and then you would go in or you would see, if you imported, the criteria rating points here, the 0 to 20, in that where it's circled. Okay. And then for the REQOB, similarly, you would see the criteria code populated, and you would see the 1 to 4 there. So what's different with the OCR is that you would select the evaluation type of OCR, but then you would have to go over to the criteria code, and it wouldn't be automatically populated. You would then select, if you were manually entering, you would select the appropriate HIDE rating. So the OCR 1 to 4. And then you would not put in anything in the criteria rating points. And if you were submitting manually, obviously you would need to click on validate and save when you were done. Right, so either if you were manually entering or if you were going in to look at these records, this is what you would see. And then on the next slide, I just put in a screenshot of, down below, once that record is completed, what would that look like? And this is a complete record if you don't have any optional components in your APPR plan. So all we would see for that staff member would be 3 records, right? You would see the REQSP, the REQOB, and the overall rating in this case, which is OCR 04. All right. And then the last step and most important step is you want to verify this data at level 2. So once you put in your staff eval information and you migrate it and it refreshes, you want to go look at the CERS 331 because this is the information that gets certified. And you want to make sure everything is complete and accurate at level 2. Again, no later than October 18th at noon to meet the October 20th deadline. But as I had mentioned, SED would like that information sooner. If you can get that in sooner, the target date was August 18th. And then there is a certification form again that must be completed by no later than October 27th in the SED monitoring area on the business portal. All right, so any other questions there?
There's a couple items in the chat, or one item in the chat about from Shannon. They're getting a VARC from Education Analytics as well, and they use Staff Track to manage their ACE PPR scores, which makes reporting an easy one-step process.
Okay, good to know. Staff Track is giving
Yeah.
you good extract.
Yes, they do provide the data in a nice format that's easily imported to level 0.
Mhm.
So that's all I see there for now.
All right, so in as you start to get working on this, the first thing is to if you're not the person that is involved in the APPR process, is to find out who is and who has access to the SED monitoring and performance area on the business portal if you do not, and take a look at your summary and see what has to be reported and where that information is being reported, what source system you're using. And then take it from there. And we, again, will help you in terms of reporting that information once you've gathered those scores and ratings. All right, so if there are no other questions, I'm going to pass it back over to Helen.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you everyone for sticking around. We're aware that we're going a little bit late today, but we're in the home stretch now, so it'll only be a little while longer, and then you can go about the rest of your day. So here are some slides from testing and reporting services. I'm just going to go through them quickly to let you know that they are here. They will be distributed with the presentation, either after today's meeting or tomorrow. There will also be a recorded version of that presentation sent out along with all the other materials. And if you do need to reach anyone in the testing department, here's all their contact information. We have some things on the horizon coming up, and everything that is for the rest of this meeting is subject to change, of course, but we wanted to share what we know, or at least what we think we know. There's some new reporting guidance for homeschool in the 23-24 school year. So what's the same from old to new is the reporting of homeschool students if they are taking assessments. That doesn't change. It's existed that way, and it's not going to change going forward, at least not next year. So what's changed are the last two items. While it used to be that you'd report classified students only if they were also receiving services, going forward into next year, you should begin reporting classified students whether or not they are receiving services. So all classified homeschoolers will have to be reported with the 5905 enrollment code. Again, that's not for this school year. That's going to be for next school year, which starts soon. So you should definitely be aware of that. The State Education Department reference file, or SEDREF, lists district contacts among other important information for the district, such as beds code, address, and more. It's crucial that your SEDREF listings get updated if there were any changes in your district this past year. You want to make sure that the correct in-district folks get the SED updates that they should. And SEDREF is the database that SED uses in order to get those communications out. So SED needs your changes in hand by July 7th. And if you have any questions regarding this whatsoever, please direct those questions to data support. And there's a link to data support right there. So some upcoming collections in the fall Staff evaluation ratings, as you just heard about, the data collection deadline is currently targeted for October 20th. You can certainly get those in earlier if you want. The certification date is October 27th. And for August graduates, that means August of this calendar year, are reported as part of the 23-24 school year data collection. So the level 1 data migration for that data is Wednesday, October 14th at 2023. A little bit of information about the MHRIC mentorship program. It is a program that provides individualized assistance and support to new district data coordinators. Our team of data reporting assistants help participants establish data reporting and verification processes and assist with the establishment of best practices and effective timelines within the district. Curriculum covers topic areas necessary for understanding the role of a district data coordinator, and prepares the data reporting mentee to create and foster a culture of data understanding and use within the district, access to specific data presentation models, videos, and other support materials and resources designed to complement the curriculum. General guidance is provided as needed in a supportive atmosphere. For more information about this program or to register, please contact Dr. Mariah Aiden, and here is her email address for you. We have for you here the best ways to reach us, as well as a link to our website. If you have any questions about level 2, level 0, reporting requirements and deadlines, errors, anything related to state data reporting, please reach out to the Data Warehouse Help Desk. Unless, of course, you hail from one of our districts that subscribes to our data reporting assistance service, in which case, please contact your shared DDC directly, or you can contact the team at the shared CSS email address. And lastly, there's our website where we'll be posting the recording of this meeting, and there are more resources for you there, and it should be getting an update soon. And here's everyone's favorite almost end of the meeting slide. These are the meeting dates for the 23-24 school year. So please make a note of them. All meetings will be remote. None of these meetings have an in-person attendance option. So please plan accordingly for those. And we are shifting from a 9 to 12 meeting time to a 9 to 1 meeting time. This will ensure we have enough time to get you all of the information that we need to within the time period allotted, as well as additional networking and discussion opportunities for breakout rooms and other events that we might have within the meeting, like special speakers, things of that nature. The advantage to having the 4-hour meeting instead of the 3-hour meeting is hopefully we can end those a little early. As it is now, we've been ending the meetings a little bit late. And so we wanted to make sure we have enough time, and everyone's always happy when they end a meeting early, right? So we're going to be doing that next year. And please be aware that the draft slides and Zoom links are always emailed out to the field and to registrants on the Friday before the meeting date. So make sure you're looking at your email then. And I wanted to go ahead and thank everyone for their attendance today, and give everyone the opportunity, if there are any additional questions, you can go ahead and pose them now.
We're getting some thank yous and some comments about virtual versus in person, which we will review after the meeting with our team.
Great.
But for right now, as Helen said, we are scheduled for remote only sessions.
All right. Thank you very much to everyone for attending. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end our recording and say, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.